Welcome to the Fund2000.com real estate podcast. My name is Chuck Ham. This episode addresses what borrowers can do if they're facing foreclosure. Today I heard a realtor in another state interviewed on a small town news show about this question. She was asked what she would recommend to borrowers facing foreclosure, and her response was okay, but typical. Instead of giving a better, more complete response, she gave the salesperson realtor response. Realtors, I believe, should remember that we have a fiduciary duty to our clients. We have to step into the shoes of our clients, and in this case of a borrower who is thinking about hiring us for a job. And we can't just sell them on that one job, we have to advise them properly. So when they contact us and want to know what their options are, we can't only recommend the options that work best for us as salespeople. What would work best for a realtor is to get a sale, right? And that's what the realtor did on the news show. She recommended borrowers call their realtor because there are lots of ready, willing, and able buyers out there that would like to have their home that is about to be foreclosed on, and that a realtor could help make that sale. I'm not completely disagreeing that that's a good option. She's right, because her recommendation is to not walk away from equity, and that's not bad advice. I share in that recommendation, but I think a borrower in distress might have other options that they might not consider, and that's one reason why they contact realtors and real estate professionals generally to consult. So if you're new to real estate, let's review this term equity. What is equity? That's the amount of value the property has above the debt held against the property. You also need to take into account the costs of the transaction to access that equity. So in order to access that equity, you have to sell the property, and in order to sell, there's going to be cost of the transaction, which takes away from some of that equity. So let's do an example. If you have a $1 million property and you owe $900,000 on that property, let's say for round numbers sake that it's going to cost you $50,000 in fees and costs to get it sold. You have $50,000 in equity. 1 million, assuming the sale price is $1 million, assuming the $900,000 debt, which will be paid off through escrow, and then transaction fees and costs of $50,000, which will also be paid through escrow, then the net proceeds to the seller, to the borrower seller, is $50,000. A borrower facing foreclosure should explore that option, but also all options before making a decision to sell the property. First, the borrower should know most lenders have really attractive default workout programs. You can cure the default, and sometimes they make it very attractive to do that. Usually, the lenders won't offer workout programs unless you have missed enough payments, probably 2 or 3 payments, and then they'll know that the borrower is really in distress because you're already taking a credit hit as a borrower if you've missed payments. So once you've already taken that credit hit and you're not making payments, then it's clear to the lender that they need to work this out with the borrower. So they actually have a duty before initiating foreclosure to contact the borrower and try to work it out. But not only do they do that, they're doing really well, because after the 2008-2009 real estate downturn, they got really used to these workout programs, and now I would say the programs are pretty attractive to a borrower who is in distress. We'll talk about a couple of those options that most lenders offer. Lenders have an incentive to work it out with the borrower, first because they have a duty under the law to make the attempt to work it out, but also lenders also have risk in the decline of the value of the property. There's also risk with a vacant property. They don't want the borrower, owner occupant, or anybody, they don't want a vacant property because that will also end up costing them money. The value of the property could decline. So lenders offer things like loan modifications, and one of the loan modification programs that we see the most is called the deed in lieu of foreclosure. So in lieu of foreclosure, you, as the borrower, would promise to repay the missed payments. It's the most common program that lenders use to help work out a default with a borrower. A lot of borrowers are getting into those kinds of programs post-COVID, so we're seeing a lot of borrowers in all kinds of missed payment situations, not just residential, in which they will accept a deed on top of their existing debt. The deed in lieu of foreclosure doesn't forgive the missed payments. Instead, the lender writes up a second note, which is a contract for the new debt composed of missed payments, for the borrower to agree to pay back the missed payments at a later date or on different terms. The lender will also require that the borrower agree that a default on the repayment of the missed payments is a default on the entire debt, and that the lender can still initiate foreclosure for failure to repay either one of the payment structures. So there are two common options for repayment of these deeds in lieu of foreclosure. One is that the borrower agree to an additional set of payments every single month along with existing payments. The other option is that the missed payments trail after the term of the loan, or in other words, extends the loan by the amount of the payments that were missed. If you're a borrower in distress, possibly missing some payments, and maybe you've already received a notice of default, feel free to contact me and we can go over some of your options. When deciding if the borrower is going to sell the property or try to stay in the property, the borrower should also explore the cost of renting and any other option that they have. Selling the property will yield to the borrower some sale proceeds, hypothetically, which can be put towards rent or even buying a replacement property. Those are the options that should be explored. If rents or replacement properties are too expensive, then that will help you make the decision on whether or not to stay. These are all questions that I help clients with all the time, and you can see how these are a little bit more expanded responses to the question of what should a borrower do facing foreclosure than what that realtor did on the news show that I started out describing. I try to help my clients understand all their options and understand all the costs and the upside and the income from each option and costs along with it. You should know that foreclosure is a public process. The notices are a public record. The first notice is called the Notice of Default and is recorded at the county recorder's office. That information becomes available to the world. The lender has to wait 90 days before then recording and publishing in the newspaper the notice of sale. So when you have a default and when the lender records a notice of default, you have a 90-day countdown before the property can be sold. That is California law. It's not going to get sold before that 90 days expires. That's what we call your redemption period. And the requirement that the notice be published in the newspaper is not really to shame the borrower. It's an embarrassing situation to be in, and it is public, so there is that embarrassment factor. But the purpose is to advertise to the world that there will be a sale, for the purpose of putting all the parties on notice and to attract buyers to the sale, to get the most money for the sale, to help recover the debt that was supposed to be paid. There's a new law that affects tenants living in property subject to foreclosure. So let's say you're a tenant and you're renting this property and you find out that it's going into foreclosure. California law now gives you 45 days as a tenant after the sale to match the bid at sale. That's pretty cool because you don't have to go above the bid. You don't have to guess what you can get the property for. You just see if you can get the property for that highest bid, and as a tenant, you get preference under the law. So let's say you're a tenant and you want to buy the property you're living in. You first have to satisfy the notice requirement. So after the sale, you have to figure out if you're going to make a bid. Within 15 days of the sale, you have to write to the trustee. That's going to be the person on the notice of sale, or the office address and phone number that's on the notice of sale and also on the notice of default. And you need to express your intent to submit a tenant bid. Then within 45 days, you have to submit the bid. It's a 45-day window of time for that tenant to first make a decision as to whether they're going to bid within that 15 days. And if nobody expresses intent within 15 days, then the trustee can issue the trustee's deed. But if within the 15 days somebody does express intent to submit a bid, then the property remains available to that tenant who expressed intent for 45 days. And just like any other trustee's sale, you have to come when you make your bid with funds. And so when you submit your bid within that 45 days, you have to submit the funds with the bid. If you are a borrower facing foreclosure, we have options for you. Contact me. Contact my office. I can discuss all the options with you free of charge. We want to help you. Even if we're not going to get paid, we're happy to run through the options for you and discuss it. Also, like I said before, it is an embarrassing subject. Even though the notice of default is public record, if you're going through that, let's talk still. It isn't as widely advertised as the notice of sale, and we can help you get your property sold before people really know that you're in default and that there's a foreclosure. It's the people who are really looking for that information that are going to find it, but most of the world is not looking for foreclosure information, so they're not going to know. And we have ways to keep things confidential. Our office uses non-disclosure agreements. We have our own forms. We can also use your forms. We're happy to review them. If you have a confidentiality issue for any reason, not just because of foreclosure, we're happy to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Selling on the market through a realtor like me or my agents at sold2000.com can help you keep more of your money. We want to help you keep your equity. We want you to also save on fees and costs. I was just looking at a property that sold at foreclosure auction in the city where I live, which is Moore Park, just last month. The person that bought the property at auction bought it for a total of $969,000. Now the property will likely sell for over $1.2 million in the next month or two if the new owner decides to put it on the market, and that's even in this declining market. I was looking at the comparable sold properties, which were only from the past few months and no longer than a year, and they were selling for 1.3 and up to $1.4 million. So this unfortunate borrower walked away from over $250,000 in equity, and that's money that this borrower could have benefited from. That $250,000 figure is assuming, let's say, $50,000 of costs in selling. That includes, commissions to the buyer's agent, the costs of paying title and escrow fees, and the other costs that might go with selling a property. If you expect a notice of default, or you have a friend that is expecting one or already has one, let's talk. We have ways to get your property sold quickly, or we'll counsel with you on what your options are. We can help you keep your money and your equity. We can help you get the most of it back through a full market value sale. And we have ways to make sure that we're not advertising the default and foreclosure status. We have ways to expedite it so that we can work out the sale within the time period that's required. And like I said, we can use a non-disclosure agreement. Our in-house lender will be available 24/7 to pre-qualify all buyers independently and reduce your risk with unqualified buyers who sometimes have to back out of real estate transactions. And sometimes they have to back out because of problems that could have foreseen. And that's why it's best to use an office like ours, where we have the lender in-house. In the same office, we are talking about loans and sales all at the same time. If you're a buyer, let us represent you. If you're self-employed, we can help you. If you don't have that typical W-2 job and you have good income, you have bank statements that can show what your income has been for a period of time, maybe 12 months, let's look at that, because we can get you qualified for loans using different programs. If you've ever been rejected or not approved for a loan and there's a house you want, contact our office. Or if you think there might be a house you want and you want to explore all your options, let us know and we'll find a way for you to qualify. Check us out at sold2000.com for our sales side. If you want to go straight to our mortgage website, go to fund2000.com. You can check out interest rates, apply for a loan, and or you can just contact me. Thanks for listening today.